All right, so let's dive into something I know keeps a lot of you up at night. Cybersecurity budgets.
Yeah.
You need to bolster your defenses,
Right.
but
Yeah.
getting the CFO to sign off on that budget increase
Oh, yeah.
can feel like an uphill battle.
For sure.
Ever feel like you're speaking different languages?
It's a common struggle.
Right.
And it's not about one side being right
Yeah.
and the other wrong.
Uh-huh.
It's often a case of mismatched perspectives.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we're going to unpack some key insights from Understanding the CFO's Perspective, a CISO's Guide to Securing Budget,
Okay.
and hopefully equip you with the tools to bridge that communication gap.
We'll try to give you more than just
Yeah.
we'll delve into the why behind the CFO's thinking.
Okay, so the article kicks off with this quote from Charlie Munger
Okay.
about life being a series of opportunity costs.
Right.
Now, I'm all for a good philosophical musing,
Mhm.
but what's the connection to cybersecurity budgets?
It's all about understanding how CFOs and boards
Okay.
make strategic decisions.
Okay.
Imagine this, a company has extra capital
Okay.
and needs to decide between investing in cybersecurity infrastructure
Mm-hmm.
or expanding into a new market.
Okay.
Both choices offer potential benefits,
Right.
but choosing one means foregoing the other.
Yeah.
That's the opportunity cost in action.
So it's not just about whether cybersecurity is important in a general sense.
Right.
It's about how it stacks up against other potential uses of
Yeah.
those funds.
Exactly.
Got it.
And here's where things get tricky.
Okay.
CFOs are used to dealing with quantifiable risks,
Mm-hmm.
market fluctuations,
Yeah.
supply chain disruptions,
Uh-huh.
things they can model and measure.
Right.
Cybersecurity risks, on the other hand,
Yeah.
often feel more nebulous,
Yeah.
harder to put concrete numbers on.
That's interesting because you'd think CFOs of all people would be hyper aware of risk.
Sure.
I mean, their whole job revolves around managing it. So why aren't those cybersecurity red flags waving as brightly for them?
It boils down to communication, really.
Okay.
Think of it like this. If you're explaining cybersecurity risks in highly technical terms,
Mm-hmm.
focusing on vulnerabilities
Mm-hmm.
and attack vectors,
Right.
it might not resonate with a CFO who's primarily concerned with financial statements and ROI.
So it's like that classic bumper sticker wisdom.
Yeah.
The meaning of the communication is the response you get.
Exactly.
If the CFO isn't getting it,
Yeah,
we need to change the message,
Right.
not just repeat it louder.
precisely. Instead of just listing all the scary cyber threats,
Mm-hmm.
focus on the financial impact.
Okay.
Explain how investing in security can protect revenue streams,
Yeah.
prevent costly downtime, and safeguard the company's reputation.
Now we're talking their language.
Right.
But let's be realistic.
Yeah.
Even when you frame it in financial terms,
Mm-hmm.
there's always the pressure to be capital efficient. Does that just mean squeezing every penny out of the security budget?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
It's about striking that balance between pursuing opportunities
Mm-hmm.
and protecting existing value.
Okay.
Imagine a company is developing a groundbreaking new product. Investing in R&D is crucial,
Uh-huh.
but so is ensuring that their intellectual property
Yeah.
is protected from cyber attacks.
So it's about making smart choices that align with both short-term and long-term goals.
Exactly.
Speaking of smart choices, the article breaks down 3 key risk management strategies that CSOs should understand.
Okay.
Buying down risk,
Mm-hmm.
transferring risk,
Right.
and accepting risk.
Yep.
Let's unpack those, shall we?
Let's.
Okay, buying down risk is the most straightforward.
Yeah.
It's essentially investing in controls to reduce the likelihood or impact of a cyber incident.
Right.
Think firewalls,
Mm-hmm.
antivirus software,
Mm-hmm.
security awareness training for employees.
Yep.
Okay, pretty standard stuff.
Yeah.
What about transferring risk? Yeah.
Is that just a fancy way of saying get cyber insurance?
You got it.
Okay.
It's acknowledging that some risks are simply too large to shoulder alone.
Mm-hmm.
Cyber insurance can help absorb some of the financial blow if something does happen.
Right.
But, and this is important,
Yep.
it shouldn't be seen as a substitute for strong internal security practices.
Right. It's not a free pass
Yeah.
to skimp on security measures.
Exactly.
Now, this last one, accepting risk,
Yeah.
always makes me a bit uneasy.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't that sound a bit like sticking your head in the sand
Yeah,
and hoping
right.
for the best?
It's not about being naive or reckless.
Okay.
It's about acknowledging that you can't eliminate every single risk,
Uh-huh.
no matter how much you spend.
Right.
Accepting risk means setting aside reserves,
Yeah.
having a plan B if things go south.
Okay.
It's about being prepared for those unstructured worries,
Hmm.
the threats you might not even anticipate yet.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better.
Yeah.
But how do you know how much risk to accept?
That seems incredibly subjective.
That's where having clearly defined risk limits becomes crucial.
Okay.
And this is where CISOs play a critical role in guiding the conversation.
The article stresses that exceeding those limits should be a rare occurrence.
Right.
What does that mean in practice?
It means that if you're constantly finding yourself needing to justify going over budget,
Mm-hmm.
your security posture might be misaligned with the organization's overall risk tolerance.
Okay.
Let's say a company decides they're only willing to accept a certain level of financial risk
Uh-huh.
from a potential data breach.
Okay.
If your current security controls can't realistically keep the potential damage within those limits.
Right. That's a pretty clear signal that you need more resources.
Exactly.
But how do you actually go about defining those limits? It can't just be arbitrary numbers pulled out of a hat, right?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
It requires a thorough, data-driven risk assessment.
Okay.
You need to understand your organization's specific vulnerabilities,
Mm-hmm.
the potential impact of different cyber threats,
Right.
and factor in things like industry regulations and compliance requirements.
So you're not just throwing darts at a board.
Right.
You're taking a measured analytical approach.
Exactly.
And that's what's going to resonate with a CFO who thrives on data-driven decision-making.
Precisely. And here's where the support of senior executives and the board becomes invaluable.
Okay.
They can champion cybersecurity,
Mm-hmm.
align it with business goals,
Yeah.
and help shift perceptions from cost center to strategic investment.
Right. Because if the CEO and the board are on board,
Yeah.
it sends a powerful message that cybersecurity is a top priority.
Exactly.
And that makes it much harder for the CFO to dismiss those budget requests.
Precisely. They can be powerful advocates,
Yeah.
ensuring that cybersecurity gets the attention and resources it deserves.
Right.
And they can play a key role in bridging that communication gap
Yeah.
between the CISO and the CFO.
And because sometimes, let's be honest, it feels like they're speaking entirely different languages.
Right.
Having that senior level translator,
Mm-hmm.
someone who understands both the business and the security side, can make a huge difference.
Exactly.
But what about the board's role in oversight and accountability?
Yeah.
I feel like that's often overlooked.
It's absolutely crucial.
Okay.
The board needs a clear understanding of the organization's cyber risks
Uh-huh.
and how they're being managed.
Okay.
They might set up a dedicated cybersecurity committee
Mm-hmm.
or integrate cybersecurity into their existing risk management frameworks.
So it's not just about throwing money at the problem. It's
No.
about having a system of checks and balances
Yeah,
to make sure those resources are being used effectively.
exactly.
But before we go further down that rabbit hole,
Okay.
let's take a quick pause.
Sure.
We've covered a lot of ground already,
Yeah.
from understanding the CFO's mindset to the
Um.
importance of risk assessment and the role of the board.
Indeed, but we've only just scratched the surface. When we return, we'll delve into specific strategies that CISOs can use to effectively communicate with CFOs
Yeah.
and secure the budget they need to protect their organizations.
Sounds good. Welcome back. We just explored how CISOs can start thinking like CFOs
Right.
to understand their priorities and concerns. But now let's get down to brass tacks.
What?
How can you actually secure that budget once you have a seat at the table?
It's time to channel your inner salesperson.
Okay.
You're not just asking for money,
Uh-huh.
you're selling an investment opportunity.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Right.
Tell me more about this sales pitch.
First, ditch the technical jargon
Mm-hmm.
and translate your security needs into the language of ROI,
Okay.
return on investment.
Okay.
CFOs want to know how each dollar spent
Right.
will benefit the bottom line.
So instead of saying we need to upgrade our firewall,
Yeah.
I should say investing in a stronger firewall will reduce the risk of a data breach,
Right.
which could cost us millions in fines and legal fees.
Precisely make that connection between security spending
Mm-hmm.
and tangible business outcomes.
Okay.
Let's say the company is focused on customer acquisition.
Right.
Highlight how robust security measures build trust
Mhm.
and protect sensitive data,
Yeah.
ultimately attracting and retaining more customers.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's about demonstrating that security is not just a cost center,
Right.
but a strategic enabler of business goals.
Exactly. And remember, numbers speak louder than words.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just say a cyber attack could be devastating.
Yeah.
Quantify the potential impact.
So instead of saying ransomware is a big threat,
Yeah.
I could say a successful ransomware attack could cripple our operations,
Yeah.
costing us an estimated $50,000 per hour in downtime.
Now you're getting it.
Okay.
Put real dollar amounts on those potential consequences.
Right.
The fair model factor analysis of information risk is a great tool for quantifying cyber risks in financial terms.
Okay.
It helps you speak the CFO's language
Mm-hmm.
and demonstrate the value of your security investments.
That's super helpful. I've heard some CISOs talk about using data
Yeah.
to back up their budget requests.
Sure.
What kind of data are we talking about here?
Think of it as building your evidence file.
Okay.
You can use industry benchmarks to compare your organization's security posture
Mm-hmm.
to others in your sector.
Okay.
Data from your own security assessments can highlight vulnerabilities
Uh-huh.
and areas for improvement.
Okay.
And threat intelligence feeds can provide insights into emerging threats
Right.
that might impact your organization.
So if I can show that our current anti-phishing training program
Yeah.
has reduced click-through rates by 50%, that strengthens my case for continued investment in security awareness.
Exactly. Data provides that objective validation,
Right.
taking the emotion out of the conversation.
Okay, so we've talked about RI, quantifying risks, and using data, but let's not forget about the human element,
Right.
building strong relationships.
Absolutely. The more you connect with the CFO and other decision makers, the more they'll see you as a trusted advisor,
Yeah.
and not just someone asking for money.
So don't just show up once a year with a laundry list of demands.
Exactly. Make cybersecurity an ongoing conversation.
Okay.
Share relevant articles,
Mm-hmm.
discuss industry trends,
Mm-hmm.
offer insights on how security impacts their areas of responsibility.
Become a valuable resource, not just a vendor.
Precisely. The more you integrate security into the fabric of the organization,
Right.
the more likely it is to be viewed as a strategic investment
Yeah.
rather than a necessary evil.
All of this is great advice.
Sure.
But let's be realistic.
Okay.
Sometimes even with the best sales pitch and solid data,
Yeah.
budget constraints are just a fact of life.
Right.
What happens when you've done everything right,
Mhm.
but the resources just aren't there?
That's when prioritization becomes paramount.
Okay.
You need to understand which risks pose the greatest threat to your organization
Mm-hmm.
and focus your limited resources on mitigating those first.
So it's about making those tough choices.
Right.
Figuring out where you can get the biggest bang for your buck.
Exactly. But remember,
Mm-hmm.
prioritization doesn't mean neglecting everything else.
Mm-hmm.
It's about being strategic and finding creative solutions.
I'm all ears.
Right.
Give me some examples of these creative solutions.
Think outside the traditional security toolbox.
Okay.
Maybe that means exploring open source security tools
Mm-hmm.
instead of expensive proprietary software.
Okay.
Or leveraging cloud-based security services that offer scalability and cost-effectiveness.
So finding ways to do more with less.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of partnerships.
Okay.
Connect with other organizations in your industry. Share best practices.
Yeah,
And maybe even explore opportunities for shared resources or joint security initiatives.
that's a great idea. And sometimes the best solutions come from collaboration
Right.
and tapping into collective wisdom.
Yeah.
But let's not forget that security isn't just about technology.
Sure.
It's about people and processes as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sometimes the most effective security measures are also the most affordable.
Okay.
Strengthening your password policies,
Mm-hmm.
implementing multi-factor authentication,
Mm-hmm.
providing regular security awareness training.
Right.
These things can dramatically reduce risk without breaking the bank.
Right. It's about creating that culture of security awareness
Exactly.
where everyone understands their role in protecting the organization.
Exactly. And sometimes simply improving communication and collaboration between different departments
Mm-hmm.
can make a huge difference.
Okay.
When everyone is on the same page and working toward the same security goals,
Right.
it can amplify the impact of even limited resources.
This has been a goldmine of practical advice.
Well, thank you.
But before we move on,
Okay.
I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier.
Mm-hmm.
The role of the board in overseeing cybersecurity.
Right.
We know it's important, but how can we make sure it's not just a box-checking exercise?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
The board's involvement needs to be more than just passive oversight.
Okay.
They should actively engage with the CISO, asking tough questions,
Uh-huh.
challenging
All
assumptions,
right.
and holding the organization accountable for meeting its security objectives.
So it's about fostering a culture of accountability where security is everyone's responsibility,
Yes.
from the front lines to the boardroom.
Precisely. And that brings us to the final and perhaps most crucial point.
Okay.
Even with a limited budget, CISOs can still make a huge impact by fostering a risk-aware culture
Okay.
throughout the organization.
Let's dive into that.
Yeah.
Welcome back to our deep dive into navigating the tricky world of cybersecurity budgets. We've talked about understanding the CFO's perspective, making a compelling business case,
Right.
and getting creative when resources are tight.
Yeah.
But what does it actually look like to build that risk-aware culture we keep mentioning? I have to admit, sometimes it feels like a lofty ideal, rather than something you can actually implement.
It's definitely not a set-it-and-forget-it solution.
Right.
It's about weaving security awareness into the fabric of the organization, making it part of everyone's daily decision-making process.
Okay, but how do you actually do that?
Yeah.
I mean, sending out a monthly security awareness newsletter feels a bit like checking a box rather than sparking a real shift in mindset.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It can't just be a top-down mandate.
Okay.
It needs to be engaging, relevant, and honestly, a little bit fun.
Fun.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got my attention.
Right.
Tell me more about this fun approach to security awareness.
Think interactive training sessions,
Okay.
real-world scenarios,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even friendly competitions between departments.
Uh-huh.
It's about making security relatable,
Yeah.
not just a bunch of rules and regulations.
So instead of just telling people not to click on suspicious links, you're giving them hands-on experience with simulated phishing attacks.
Exactly.
Okay.
Or maybe you create a security champion program within each department, empowering employees to be advocates for security best practices.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's about turning employees into active participants, not just passive recipients of information.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And when security becomes everyone's responsibility, you start to see a real shift in behavior.
It becomes less about fear and compliance.
Right.
And more about understanding the why behind the rules.
Exactly. And that's where you start to see the real dividends pay off.
Yeah.
A risk-aware culture can be your most valuable asset, even more so than the latest security technology. It's about creating a human firewall that's always on, constantly adapting to new threats.
That's a powerful image.
It is.
And I think it perfectly encapsulates what we've been talking about throughout this deep dive.
Yeah.
Security is not just about technology. It's about people, processes, and that shared understanding of risk.
Absolutely. And when you can bring all of those elements together, you create a security posture that's truly resilient,
Yeah.
even in the face of increasingly sophisticated threats and ever-tightening budgets.
All right, so as we wrap up this deep dive, let's leave our listeners with a final thought to ponder.
Okay.
We've discussed how CISOs can bridge the communication gap with CFOs, make a compelling business case for security investments,
Right.
and even thrive in resource-constrained environments.
Yeah.
But the ultimate goal is to create that culture of security awareness where everyone understands their role in protecting the organization.
It's about moving beyond the mindset of us versus them.
Right.
Security versus finance, and recognizing that everyone is on the same team,
Yeah.
working towards the same goal.
It's about building a culture of shared responsibility where security is woven into the very DNA of the organization.
Exactly, and that's when you truly unlock the power of collective defense. Creating an environment where everyone is empowered to be a guardian of your organization's most valuable assets.
Great insights, as always. I hope this deep dive has given our listeners some practical tools and strategies to navigate those budget conversations and build a more secure future for their organizations.
I hope so too. Until next time,
Yes.
stay vigilant and stay curious.
That's great.